Hello, everyone, and welcome to Uncivil Law. I hope you're having a great day. For today's stream, we're going to do a summary of day 2. This is Tuesday on February the 24th of the Kouri Richins trial. The testimony is happening in the murder case relating to the woman who allegedly poisoned her husband using some fentanyl, and we heard some effective testimony towards that effect yesterday, more setting the scene than anything particularly devastating. But let's go through what happened on the day that was day 2. We started the day with a cross-examination, completion of Detective Wyn. Wyn was only with Detective Woody for roughly 10 to 20 minutes at the scene, narrowing the time of overlap in information sharing, so showing that they didn't necessarily have everything coordinated as well as they could have, perhaps. Kouri told Wyn that she got into bed, felt Eric's cold body, put a blanket on him, stayed for a minute, then realized he wasn't breathing. The detail about the blanket and the delay was not relayed to Officer DeVolto minutes later. Ramos flagged this as an inconsistency in how information was being passed along. So that's, again, but it doesn't really do much for me, but that's what they were trying to do out of it. Walked Wyn through the death investigation checklist and tried to score some points relating to inconsistencies. For example, noting that the scene was never properly vacated. The checklist said to remove everyone from the scene, but that wasn't done. No placard was placed for the first photograph. The scene was only semi-secured, according to Wyn. Deputies moved items around without documenting what they moved, and the directive "do not disturb" the scene was not followed. Personally, for me, I didn't really find this particularly effective. This, to me, it didn't really go anywhere. I mean, they didn't do everything absolutely perfectly, and they didn't do things to a T in some situations, but it didn't really seem to me that it had any particular effect. So it didn't really go anywhere, right? So the failure to put a placard down to take a photograph, the failure to perfectly secure the scene by getting everyone out, these failures didn't really seem to go anywhere. So, the fact that certain information wasn't passed along by this detective or that detective, or this wasn't in that officer's notes, it just felt, to me, it all felt a little petty. I mean, it didn't really go anywhere for me. It didn't really have any effect. Why do I care? But that's what they were trying to do. I think it was nitpicky, and I don't really understand fully what the defense is trying to do here, because in their opening, they seem to indicate that they had somewhere to go. They really felt like, their witnesses are our witnesses, their facts are our facts. Their opening was a lot of, we're happy the state is calling these people. We couldn't be more thrilled. You see a witch, I see a attractive young woman, that kind of thing. And then, rather than just simply judo, right? Rather than simply just make their witnesses our witnesses and just use their facts to our advantage, right? They're doing all this nitpicky shit, which I didn't really know where it went. I couldn't be bothered to care for large parts of it, to be quite honest. But, they were, nitpicky shit can be effective if that's all you have to work with, particularly if you have a long trial. This trial is scheduled to last for something like 4 or 5 weeks. So if they get real nitpicky, a lot of nitpicky stuff could, accumulate to be something. So maybe it's all kind of throwaway stuff, but maybe there's a straw that breaks the camel back kind of moment. But for me, it didn't really work. I didn't really find it particularly effective. And they said that they have places to go, and they're not acting like they have places to go, right? It sounds like, they're cross-examining these witnesses on minutia because they don't really have anywhere to go. So they need to score these minutia points and hope it all adds up in the end. This isn't to say that the cops followed everything perfectly. They did, not follow the checklist. They did move items without documenting them. They did fail to put the placard down when they took a photograph. They did fail to get everyone out of the scene. They did, the one cop failed to record, when he relieved one cop who took over his position. Although it's in another cop's notes. But it's like I couldn't understand why we're bothering to care. To me, it felt like a lot of human beings, right? I mean, the checklist and things exist, but these are human beings, and they made what seemed to me to be fairly understandable human mistakes. So I didn't quite really understand what they're hoping to accomplish. I guess they're hoping to accomplish that the minutia itself is perhaps it sounds bigger to the jury, or perhaps, an accumulation, it'll be like, whatever. But I didn't really see how it impacted anything, but okay. The defense was able to get Wyn to admit that they didn't know Kouri personally and can't say what she was feeling because, obviously. And the characterizations of her emotions were based on comparison to victims, not other people who had lost a spouse. So it's like Kouri, but those are victims, I guess. So it's like, okay, she was acting weird, basically. Okay, you don't know Kouri, so you don't know how she acts. That's true. And mostly you deal with people who are victims, not who've just lost a spouse. I guess that's true. So you wouldn't know how such a person would act, I guess. All right, I suppose. For the redirect by the prosecution, they helped to establish chain of command. Wyn was a patrol deputy, not in charge. His checklist, report, and body camera were all uploaded immediately available to investigators. So, we do have the body cam, which helped to document things, even if he himself didn't write it down in the notes, but we have the body cam, which, again, thank God for body cams, I guess, right? Because now we have it, right? So we don't necessarily need him to write things down because the body cam took care of it for us. So, yeah. The prosecution was able to get Wyn to testify that Kouri's emotional reaction was abnormal compared to other death scenes. So it's like, yes, I have been to other death scenes. For example, that Kouri's face was always in hands, no eye contact, no tears visible, weirdness like that. So that kind of thing. And then the defense on recross, Wyn admitted now he never encountered Kouri having lost a loved one before, so he had no baseline. What kind of a point is that, right? Kouri's never lost someone before, so you don't know how she'd react to the death of a death wound. So you don't know if this is abnormal for her. Yeah, but it's abnormal for other people, but you don't know how she does, so you have no baseline with respect to Kouri in particular. I guess. Yeah. Most people, when they lose a spouse to death, it's the first time. So, and if it's not, we have other further questions to talk about, right? If you lose a lot of spouses through death, we have further follow-up questions. So yeah, most of the time it's the first time. So does this do anything for you? Not really. So the defense is trying to claim that there's sloppy scene management. But again, I don't think it was especially sloppy. It wasn't perfect. So, but perfect is, not perfect is not the same thing as sloppy. They did document a lot of things. They did write a lot of things down. They did take a lot of placards. They did do a lot of things. So I wouldn't go so far as to say it's sloppy. I would say it's not perfect. But they're trying to say it's sloppy. I'm not really buying it. And I'm also not really buying how it had anything to do with anything. I'm really not understanding why, even if it was sloppy, why that matters in this particular case, right? So sloppiness is not ideal, obviously. There's a reason we want to not be sloppy. But just because it's sloppy doesn't necessarily mean it impacted anything, right? In the end, does it have an impact? Does it matter in some way that it was sloppy, other than, they just didn't cross their T's and dot their I's? And for me, it's like, I couldn't figure out why it mattered. So, it didn't really seem to go anywhere, but that's me. All right, the second witness that was up for the day was Cameron Sessions, also known as Cameron Larsons. She was the OMI investigator, Office of the Medical Investigator. All right, so this was her first solo scene as the Office of Medical Examiner or Investigator. She documented the body, face up, t-shirt over face, boxer shorts, AED pads, tubing, red fluid on face. She noted there was no evidence of any apparent injury. She identified the person via driver's license, sealed the body bag with number, tamper-proof tag, and escorted the body to transport. She searched the trash cans at the request of the sheriff's deputies, looking for alcohol. She found none. In the master bedroom or bathroom trash, found coffee grounds, newspaper, and a cock and bull ginger beer bottle, non-alcoholic, in the kitchen trash. Did not note it in her report, but remembered it years later because of childhood familiarity with the distinctive bottle. So, like, okay, I didn't, again, record these things, but to what avail? The defense, went ham on the fact it was her first solo scene. So it was her first time as the primary, first time as the sole person to do the investigation. So they tried to write her off as being inexperienced. Yeah. They established that she only had one brief conversation with Kouri in a child's bedroom to explain the protocol, which, fair enough. Why would she talk to the victim or talk to the widow? That's not her job, right? Her job is to investigate the death. So yeah, she had a brief conversation with Kouri to say, okay, here's what I'm going to do, just so you know. And then kind of went about doing, the medical examiner thing. Her job isn't to talk to living people. Her job is to talk to dead people. So yes, I suppose it's true. I only had a brief conversation, but that's kind of what you would expect for me. I'm not a detective. I'm not a police officer. Not firsthand observation. She couldn't vouch for the accuracy of information others gave her. I mean, okay, but she's going to note things that she finds to be relevant. And it's good that she's noting those things because it might influence her investigation. So if she's told certain things about the deceased person, then that information might influence what she does. And so it's good that she records it. It's not necessarily important that it's accurate. Well, I suppose it is in some sense. It's more the effect it had on her, right? Because if she's told, they said that they drank a lot, that might cause her to think alcohol or go look for alcohol that she wouldn't otherwise do. So it's like, did you know that to be true? I suppose not, but people told me. And then, to some degree, I relied on it and went forth, which again, you would kind of expect to some degree. She couldn't remember whether medications were sent with the body, though her protocol would have been to photograph anything placed inside the body bag. So, again, doesn't kind of work anywhere. The prosecution got chain of custody foundation for the body. Defense reinforced a theme of incompetence or inexperience or incompleteness. The ginger beer detail is small, but suggests someone was drinking Moscow Mule. So it's a standard ingredient. So again, with the cups, that might be why they think Moscow Mule, which could support the narrative that Eric was drinking, which, because they found alcohol in the body, but that isn't really in dispute. The prosecution thinks that the Moscow Mule was the poison delivery vehicle. So, okay, we have evidence that he was drinking. There was alcohol in his body, and we found the ginger beer bottle and the Moscow Mule cups and so forth and so on. So, okay. So it didn't really do anything. I didn't really find anything the defense did here particularly important. It's like, you're really inexperienced. Are you? Did that inexperience matter in some way? I mean, again, none clear to me. But that's what they were trying to do. All right, third witness. Deputy David Pimentel. He was assigned to, according to the government, assigned to scene security and the medication log. He found 3 different medications in the master bedroom. Naltrexone, hydrocodone, and doxycycline. He was told that Eric may have taken a THC gummy, but he didn't find any THC gummies, drug paraphernalia, or illicit drugs, despite K9 training making him familiar with what those look like. So he didn't find those things, but okay. The defense He brought out that they only searched the master bedroom, not the kitchen, bedroom drawers, nor the closet connected to the bathroom, nor anywhere in the house. Didn't ask Kouri where the THC gummies were located. Only logs the 3 medications in roughly 90 minutes on scene. Apparently, he left the medication log and collected medication on a dresser at one point. Not ideal. He didn't write a report until January 2023, nearly a year later, and only because his supervisor asked him to and couldn't explain why it was so late. So not so good on the contemporaneous recording. The medication log wasn't entirely in his handwriting, so that's interesting. Like, who else is writing this thing? Don't know. That's a problem. He admitted that the search was not complete for drugs at the scene and wasn't searching for medications beyond what was pointed out to him. And on redirect, prosecution showed the body camera of him opening a cupboard above the toilet. No THC gummies that were inside, but defense countered he never looked on top of the cupboard, which is where all the THC gummies were found. He also didn't photograph the cupboard before moving things around. So gummies is somewhat notable. So that's all kind of interesting. So it feeds some inferences that the investigation was somewhat sloppy, but again, not clear to what effect. But the fact that the gummies were later found on the top of the cupboard that he opened but didn't notice because he didn't look on top of it is pretty notable, I guess. Next witness was Margie Offred. She's an EMT with 40 years of experience. Prosecution brought out that when she arrived on the scene, she found Eric on the floor at the foot of the bed. She applied the automated CPR machine known as a Lucas machine. No medications, pill bottles, or drug paraphernalia was visible anywhere around the body. Asked Kouri about medications, was told the naltrexone was for Lyme disease and CBD gummies. No other medication disclosed. Body position stood out very straight at the foot of the bed rather than on the side. Defense, the dispatch call was for cardiac arrest. That was the information EMS was working from, not poisoning or overdose. Yeah, that would be what they were told. I mean, obviously. Narcan was administered as a last-ditch effort. You need to try everything, but the body was cold, so that wasn't going to do much. Offred told a deputy she initially guessed it might be aneurysm because of the blood coming from his mouth. He got offered to confirm you never know how someone will react to news of unexpected death. There can be silent shock or hysteria. The range can be wide and unexpected. Blood sugar of 458 is extremely high, but the Offred couldn't explain why. Administered pre-hospital care report based on the information she had. She didn't know if it was correct. Prosecution got basic medical response document. Defense used the witness to show the initial working theory was cardiac arrest. The blood from the mouth had possible multiple explanations, for example, the CPR or intubation. And emotional reactions to death vary wildly, which, fair enough. Next witness up was Sergeant Andrew Cernish. Responded as a firefighter, not in law enforcement capacity, took over airway management. Asked by Margie Offred to search the nightstand for medications, found a hydrocodone bottle in the nightstand drawer. So, okay. Defense noted that the blood off being the scene was being... Why do I keep being disconnected and reconnected? This is very annoying. This is like the 4th or 5th time that my internet has dubbed out. This is very, very annoying. Apparently my internet is not reliable today. Is any of this coming through? How often are you guys losing me? This is very frustrating. He was able to identify white specks on the nightstand that were never swabs collected or tested. Couldn't remember if found Kouri's phone in the room or handed it to a deputy, and confirmed it was apparent Eric had been deceased for some time. So we got these white specks that were found but not tested. So that's a bit of a problem. But yeah, so it feels again like a bit of a sloppy investigation, or at least a not perfect one. Again, not sure how much it really matters, but it is what it is. Okay. Next witness was Maggie Mobley, the morgue clerk. Routine chain of custody witness received the body, broke the seal, inventory belongings, driver's license, medications, placed body in cooler. Medications went into a locker. Investigative team and doctors had access. Defense pointed out that the morgue clerk didn't open the medication bag, just logged medications were present. Couldn't remember specifics of what medications were included. But just kind of a standard chain of custody witness, so it didn't really go anywhere. Then we had the key witness of the day, Dr. Pamela Olm, the medical examiner. So finally, we get to the medical examiner who's going to tell us why dead. Why dead? Okay. So she performed the autopsy on March 5th, 2022. She has 13 years experience as a Utah medical examiner. She's board certified in anatomic, clinical, and forensic pathology. And she has testified in 75 to 100 different cases. So she's been around a little bit. She did an external exam. She noted evidence of CPR, intubation tubes, the needles for administering the epinephrine, the AED EKG pads for administering shock, rib fractures from compressions from both manual and presumably the machine, blood on face consistent with pulmonary edema from opioid overdose and CPR trauma. No evidence that there was any injury that contributed to death, however. From the internal exam, she noted a 50% coronary occlusion, but she said that that was not significant in this case because she says you need at least 75% plus for it to matter. So he has some heart blockage, but it didn't lead or cause his death in this situation. There's no evidence of a heart attack. The heart itself was a normal weight. Heavy lungs with a foamy edema consistent with an opioid overdose. Granulomas on logs from occupational exposure. So he's a stonemason. So there's some stonemason death. So he has some, he's breathed in some stone dust, apparently not wearing his dust mask at all times. All their organs were normal. Gastric contents, 700 milliliters of a pink fluid with partially digested food particles. For the toxology, she noted that fentanyl was at 15 nanograms per milliliter, which is toxic for a non-user. Norfentanyl at 3.3 nanograms per milliliter, which is a metabolite. Presumptive positive for naloxone from the Narcan, caffeine, and 4-ANPP, which is a fentanyl precursor and byproduct. Toxology that was toxology from the blood. Toxology from the gastric, fentanyl at 20,000 nanograms per milliliter. That sounds like a lot. Norepinephrine at 52 nanograms per milliliter. Acetylfentanyl at 29 nanograms per milliliter. Quetiapine at 16,000 nanograms per milliliter. Ethanol at 279 milligrams per deciliter. Presumptive acetaminophen and caffeine. As for a report from prescriptions from the pharmacies, so they look at the state level reports for prescriptions. Only testosterone was found for this individual in the prescription database. He wasn't prescribed fentanyl or quetiapine, so can't be from a prescription source because those are controlled substances and they would be in the database. But they're not in the database, so there's that. Medications that were found with the body: testosterone injectable, which was prescribed. The doxycycline, an antibiotic that was prescribed in 2019, which is somehow floating around. Hydrocodone, pain medicine that was prescribed in 2016. disulfiram and abuse alcohol deterrent. Off-label Lyme treatment was prescribed in 2019. Naloxone, opioid alcohol reduction, off-label Lyme treatment prescribed 2020. 88 of 90 pills were remaining. Manner of death, drug intoxication by fentanyl. Or the cause of death was drug intoxication by fentanyl. Manner of death, however, could not be determined. The investigation was still going on when she retired, so she lacked access to electronic evidence, financial documents, and other investigative materials. 2 phone calls with Kouri documented in case log. March the 17th, Kouri provided health history, Lyme disease, neuropathy, stonemason work, mother died of fungal infection. April 21st, Kouri said Eric never used drugs. Medications for Lyme were off-label and hadn't taken them in 4 months. So that's what we've got. Basically, a lot of fentanyl in the body and some other stuff. On cross, emphasized that the doctor had retired January 1st, 2023, and the manner of death has never been changed from undetermined. Yeah, so she can't determine where the fentanyl came from, at least from an examination of the body. So, okay, fair enough. She had no access to text messages, phone records, financial documents, or celebrite extractions when she made her determination. Okay. She saw fentanyl doses all the time in 2018 to 2022 and accidental ones all the time as well. So something she's seen a lot of. The ethanol in the gastric contents could also be from composition. So no way to distinguish exactly where the ethanol came from. No THC found in toxicology, despite the statements they took a THC gummy. The undetermined manner of death was the correct call with the information she had, as she didn't consider motive evidence when making manner of death, because why would she? And Lyme disease can be painful and could explain why he had pain medications. So that could be it. Prosecution redirect from June of 2022, when she finalized the death certificate through her retirement. She was never given any additional information from law enforcement. The investigation was still active. Her cause of death has not changed and no reason to change it. So this was the most important witness of the day, and both sides kind of got a little bit of what they needed. The prosecution established the core forensic case. Eric died of fentanyl poisoning. He had no prescription for fentanyl. The amount in his blood was toxic for a non-user. The amount in his stomach was absolutely enormous at 20,000 nanograms per deciliter. None of the drugs that they found were prescribed to Eric or found in a database for him. So that was, something. Defense got the medical examiner to confirm the manner of death is still undetermined. She saw accidental fentanyl overdoses all the time. She lacked access to digital financial evidence when she made the call and didn't consider motive. Why would she? She's there to determine what is true medically. So, the defense tried to score some points here, but again, not particularly feeling it. I mean, he has a lot of drugs that aren't particularly prescribed to him. He's got a shit ton of fentanyl that's in his body from somewhere. And she can't determine the manner of death. She can't determine, if it was an accidental overdose or a poisoning, or she can't determine that based on what she was able to observe. So, okay, I guess. But that's why investigations have other components, right? I mean, so yeah, the medical examiner couldn't figure it out, but that's why we have detectives and other people to try to put pieces together. So, didn't really do much for me, but from the defense, but okay. Then next was Allison Christensen, the autopsy tech. The prosecution on direct noted that Allison had handled the toxicology sample packets and shipping to NMS labs. Detailed chain of custody for blood tubes, fluid, urine, gastric contents, and liver samples. They described the preservation methods for various things. Samples were shipped on Monday, March 7th, after they were collected on Saturday the 5th. Also handled various evidence relating to medical stuff that was sent to an outside lab in California. Received prepared slides back, and there were no questions from the defense. And then we end the day with Chelsea Gibson, the lead crime scene tech. So another fairly key witness, the lead investigator on the scene. So a fairly key witness, the Michael Proctor of our story, hopefully less corrupt. So what we got out of her yesterday was that Gibson is the most credentialed evidence witness so far, BS in forensic science, certified crime scene analysis, 700 hours plus of training, Celebrate certified. She arrived March 4th at 6:30 a.m., left at 8:29 a.m. No THC gummies, drug paraphernalia, or obvious explanation for death found on the initial scene visit. She created 3D scans of the home that were later used for search warrants. April the 13th of 2022, there was a search warrant executed and a full house search. Key items that were found: Eric's green iPhone on the nightstand in the master bedroom, the quetiapine prescription bottle prescribed to Kouri Richins on the linen closet basket, master bathroom, molded packages of THC gummies and edibles in the medicine cabinet above the toilet in the master bedroom. So on the top of it. More gummies were located in a jacket pocket in the master closet. More gummies above the refrigerator and a kitchen cabinet. Tweezers and a small piece of plastic in a woman's Under Armour jacket pocket on the kitchen counter. Documents in a black backpack plus prescription medication in Kouri's name. And Kouri's phone was seized from her person. Another search warrant was executed on May the 8th of 2023. During this search, they discovered an orange notebook, top drawer of the nightstand master bedroom, blue iPhone, top drawer of the dresser, master bedroom, layered downloaded via Cellbrite. A second Kouri phone was seized from her person, and documents from a detached office. On November 7th of 2024, so almost a year later, there was another search warrant executed, in this case looking for handwritten documents. There was a handwritten timeline found in a kitchen cabinet, Christmas coupons with handwriting, and items that were later placed into a binder. Gibson also described downloading phones via Cellbrite, and she discussed various measurements of dimensions of various rooms. So the prosecution so far is laying out the physical evidence foundation. The bottle that was prescribed to Kouri is a critical piece. It connects Kouri to unexplained drugs found in Eric's system, so that's maybe where she got the drugs from. The tweezers in the woman's jacket are presumably relevant to handling pills or capsules. The THC gummies being found in a hidden location, such as on top of the high cupboard, jacket pockets above the fridge, suggest they were deliberately concealed. And then we're going to get today into cross-examination. So, where are we on day 2? Where are we after day 2? So the prosecution strengths. The toxicology is devastating. It's a devastating piece of evidence. The fentanyl at 15 nanograms per milliliter in the blood and 20,000 nanograms per milliliter in the stomach is a lot. So yeah, probably that's what caused the death. It's not much of a mystery anymore as to what caused the death. Probably that. The quetiapine prescribed to Kouri found in Eric's stomach, 16,000 nanograms per milliliter, but not in his blood, suggests a very recent ingestion, likely mixed with the fentanyl. So we've got this prescription that was prescribed to Kouri, and then we've got the drug that was prescribed to Kouri in his stomach, but not in his blood. So that suggests basically he took it or was fed it just before he died. So that suggests some nefarious possible things, right? The naltrexone was barely used. 88 of 90 pills were remaining. If Eric was actively abusing opioids, he'd be presumably taking his prescribed anti-craving medication. No drug paraphernalia was found anywhere. No needles, pipes, baggies, other than the gummies, or evidence of illicit drug use, which suggests, again, that this is not, that he's a drug user and that he OD'd, right? Because we found no evidence of drugs, right? No needles, no pipes, no baggies, no evidence of illicit drugs anywhere. So he just OD'd from, some stuff he bought on the street. There's really no evidence to support that. Right? So that's why that matters. So where did it come from? If it were because drug user, we might have found some drugs, but we didn't. So what up? Eric, of course, was not prescribed fentanyl. The database for drugs showed nothing except testosterone. And the measurements 55 feet from the bedroom to the kitchen, I guess, are somewhat relevant because it suggests she had to walk away to prepare something, but I don't know. Okay. Defense strengths. The manner of death, at least as far as the medical examiner, is still undetermined. So the medical examiner couldn't call it a homicide. I'm not sure how far that gets you, to be honest. But, it is what it is. I mean, the medical examiner couldn't say homicide. The medical examiner said, I can't figure it out. So is that reasonable doubt? I don't know, man. I don't know. But it is what it is. So, take it for whatever you got, value you got. Again, they were able to paint the investigation as they would say sloppy. I would say imperfect. So how much does that matter to the jury, who can say the scene wasn't properly secured, items were moved without documentation, no photographs of the original scene state, incomplete medication searches, no one asked Kouri where the gummies were, medication log left on a dresser with no handoff, report not being written for a year, white speck on a nightstand never tested. So how much does that matter? I don't know. I'm not sure it matters that much, but okay. That's at least what they're trying to say. Accidental fentanyl deaths were happening all the time during the period, so maybe he's just another victim of that. Okay. The blood from Eric's mouth was explained by intubation CPR, so I mean, fair enough. So the blood on his mouth wasn't from anything sinister, so okay. The emotional reaction testimony, they tried to neutralize it. How much did they succeed? I don't know. Every witness who commented on Kouri's demeanor was either shown to have no baseline for comparison or admitted that grief reactions were varied wildly. So how much does that matter? Up to the jury. But again, I mean, didn't do much for me from the defense, but whatever. Alcohol and the gastric contents could be from decomposition, so there's that. And Eric's had a complex medical history: Lyme disease, neuropathy, recent COVID, occupational lung disease. He better be wearing his mask. He's not wearing his mask enough. Allergies requiring an EpiPen. So they're arguing basically that this is someone who might self-medicate or take unknown substances. So that's basically what we've got. And then the bottom line of the whole thing, prosecution is building a strong circumstantial case. The fentanyl that Eric took, there's no access to end up in his body. Like, where does fentanyl come from? Where from fentanyl come? So he had no access. So where did it come from? Yeah, that's a real good question, right? So that's a problem. The defense is effectively, or at least trying to effectively, point out weaknesses in the investigation. Response potentially being careless, scene contaminated. Search is incomplete. Medical examiner doesn't call it a homicide. So that's basically where we are on all that. So for me, at least, I think the prosecution is winning. I think the prosecution's winning. I don't really think the defense is scoring many points here. So, it's like they're trying to build reasonable doubt, but they're doing it in a very nitpicky way. Maybe they have better witnesses to come. So, obviously it's way early to call this, right? Although it doesn't inspire me with a lot of confidence. Because if they have places to go then why are they doing nitpicky shit? Maybe they just want to cover every possible base, but I don't know, because if you have something strong, if you have something really good, then bringing up weaker points can weaken the whole thing. So if you have some really devastating stuff for the defense, if you have somewhere to be, and you waste time on nitpicky shit, the nitpicky shit might drown you as opposed to building you, right? It might not augment what's good. It might make what's good look worse because, oh, it's just another nitpicky thing, right? It can drown you. So for me, I think the defense seems to be overplaying if they actually have places to be. So that's sort of what I think about it. But, we'll see. The defense has there's a lot of game left to play. The key witness, obviously, is still going to be the housekeeper. That's the key witness for the prosecution. That's where their fate rises and falls to a large degree. So if they fuck up the housekeeper who apparently gave Kouri the drugs, that's where the drug came from, according to the prosecution. The Kouri asked the housekeeper for the drugs. The housekeeper gave Kouri the drugs. That's where the drugs came from. So if the state fucks that witness up, then they're just toast, right? And then, because they lose their only witness that can say, but where fentanyl came from. But fentanyl poisoning, because Kouri asked me for it, right? So if that witness falls apart for the government, they're just done. And we can pack this in, right? Because they have no other tie. They can say that he died from fentanyl, but they have no other tie to how the fentanyl got in his body. So the housekeeper is still the key witness of this thing. So if the defense can make her disappear, then they're golden. If the prosecution really sells this thing, though, then they might be golden. So for me, the housekeeper is still the key witness. If she winds up being really strong, and that's your intent to kill, I was doing it to try to kill him, that's your game. So if the prosecution really sells that witness, then they're pretty locked in. If they fuck it up, the defense is pretty locked in. And then for the defense, if Kouri takes the stand, which they've been flirting with Kouri taking the stand, if Kouri takes the stand, then that's the only other thing that could really change this. So if Kouri takes the stand and, again, really sells it, then defense wins. And if she fucks it up, prosecution wins. So that is where we're at on that. So all that good stuff. And also, I found the defense lawyers mostly annoying. So there's that. I find them a bit insufferable. I find at least 2 out of the 3 defense lawyers to be condescending and belittling and infantilizing and very sort of daycare or kindergarten teacher or whatever. So the lead female attorney is pretty insufferable. And then Mr. Humpty Dance is also pretty insufferable. The other woman isn't so bad. She's not great, but she's not insufferable. But yeah, at least 2 out of 3 of these defense lawyers are pretty insufferable. So that can also really blow up in their face. If the jury finds them insufferable like I do, then that obviously hurts Kouri's case. Also, depending on how much of a dick the judge wants to be, which he has every right to be, he can completely fuck the defense lawyer's case. Because apparently the defense lawyers, in their infinite wisdoms, didn't send out any subpoenas because they're idiots. And then the judge is like, okay, I'm going to follow the rule that says we're going to limit to scope across. And the defense is like, what? I'm like, it's the rule on everything. Yeah, you can call them on direct if you want. But they didn't send out any subpoenas. So if the prosecution releases these witnesses, which I would do, And then the defense calls them. It's like, well, there's no subpoenas because you forgot to send your own. You said I could call them on direct. Yeah, you forgot to send out subpoenas now, didn't you? So guess whose problem that is? So that's a you problem. So depending on how much of a dick the judge wants to be, which he has every right to be, the defense might not be able to put on a case because of their own incredible sloppiness. That's just hilarious. So that is totally a thing that could absolutely happen. And the judge would be 100% right, and it would be upheld on appeal. So the defense may not be able to put on a case because they're idiots. So they're insufferable and they're idiots. So there's all those things. So if they haven't sent out subpoenas like yesterday, they're just even more stupid than I could ever imagine. So maybe there won't be a defense case at all because they won't be able to call anybody, which would be hilarious. I am here for all that stupid. So all that's stupid. Yeah, so we'll see how it goes. All right, well, I'm going to sign off for now and work on my daily video, and then we will maybe do a wrap-up stream tonight, depending on availability. But that's where I'm going to leave things off for now. So I hope you've enjoyed this stream. I've enjoyed the stream. And until later, my friends, I hope all is well. Cheers for now, my friends, and goodbye.